Hello everyone. So we are back to this program, and this is the second part of learning Python programming for existing programmers. So remember that the last time we just saw a program where we are generating 100 random numbers and we are printing them in a nice format. Right? Let me just run the program one more time and show you how the program ran. Right now, the idea is to write a program to sort these numbers, first generate the number and then sort them. And so today what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to show you few more Python concepts, and then along the way let's see how far it goes, uh, and then we'll see how we can do some simple uh, um, sorting algorithm in Python. Okay, so to start with, this program is really good. But the first thing we got to do is that we got to have those 100 elements generated, and it should be in an array, right? So just printing them will not help. You do need to have an array of integers with those numbers stored in it. So because if you store it in an array, then we can sort it, right? So how do you define an array in Python? It's very simple. Let me put, I'll call these as numbers. Okay. The array variable name is numbers. Okay. And you just put square brackets. That's it. That's how you define an array, right? And since Python itself is a lot dynamic, the array length is also going to be dynamic, right? It does make sense. I mean, I know that in other languages we got to define the exact length of an array because you got to define it exactly. But with Python being a dynamic and a scripting language and an interpreted language, we can get away with, defining an array just like that. So then how do I populate my array of numbers, right? And to be little bit more a little bit more descriptive of our variable, we can say numbers to be sorted, right? That's what these numbers are. So numbers to be sorted. So these numbers to be sorted, so as soon as I generate the random number, what I can do is that I can say numbers to be sorted dot append, and you put the random number. So I was saying that, let me correct that, numbers to be sorted, right? So all you did is you just say that array and then do an append and add that random number, right? And that will store the random numbers. But the program has little bit become complicated here because, on one hand you're storing these 100 random numbers that you generated, but on the other hand you also have this printed stuff, right? So I just want to introduce you to a Python function and how that might work. And what I want is I want the numbers to be generated and stored in an array in a separate function, and then we get that stuff from the function, and then we print it, right? That will be easier. So let's see how we can do that. So I can define a function. And how do I define a function? I go to any of my files, I just say def and a function name, right? Generate random number. Okay, and in this case, I also want to make my function a little bit more useful than how it is. To say to just give it a variable. I'm just going to say how many, right? So we defined a function called generate random number, and you just tell it how many you want to generate, right? And we'll generate it. Now I could have made it as like how the random int function is, give it a beginning range and end range, but for now I'm not going to do it that way. I'm just going to say, hey, tell me how many numbers you want to generate, right? And then I can take some of these. I can kind of take all of these, just copy it, and again there's no braces involved. You just put a colon, and then whatever is indented within that function becomes part of this function, right? So it's a little cleaner when you see how you do stuff in Python. Okay, so I do have these numbers to be sorted, and I now need to do a few things. For the count in range, I'm just going to use how many plus 1. Okay, and then a random number, I'm just going to start with 0, but I'm just going to end with how many, and then I append it, right? So it's a nice function, and what I need to do is I need to return numbers to be sorted. Okay, that's it. So that's my function. I just give the function how many I need to generate, and then based on that I generate the numbers and then return an array, right? So right here, I just want to give a different variable name. So I'm just going to change to given numbers. Okay, and I'm going to call the Python function generate random number and get me 100 numbers, right? Now one other thing that it does, the Python does, is that, well, it says that, hey, I can't see your function, right? So generally what happens is, and there are better ways to do this, but for now I'm just going to take the function and put it before my program. Okay, when I do that, then I do get the generated random number. So I call given number equals generated random number, right? And I pass the parameters 100, and I should be getting an array of 100 numbers. So now I'm just going to change my loop in a little different way. I'm just going to say given number, because I need to go through every element in my array, right? So I'm just going to say given number in given numbers. So you see the loop has changed now. What I'm saying is, define a variable given number and iterate over the given numbers array and store it each time you get one value from that given numbers array, just store it in the given number, right? And so I don't need any of these other things, and I do still want to have the value to be printed in that format, but instead of random number I'm just going to call given number, because that's what is there in the loop. And then now the problem is that we don't have the count, right? Because we were trying to print it. So we got to externally define that variable, and there's nothing wrong in it. We can just say count equals 0, and then every time I go through a loop, I'm just going to put count plus plus. Let me count plus 1. Okay. Well, there's no plus plus operator in Python, so I'm remembering my days in C. But you are incrementing the count every time you are in the loop, right? That's what I'm trying to do. And then I'm just printing the given number, and if the count, the remainder of the count is 0, then I also print a new line, right? So now I did so many things in this program just to uh, store my generated random numbers in an array and print it. But the program is going to is going to work exactly the same. Let's see it, right? Okay, you see, I ran the program. It does exactly the same. But what I did is I structured my program to be a little bit more better, because now I have a function. You see that I have a function, and let's look at the function. Your function starts with def, def, and the function has a name, and within your parenthesis you just put any number of parameters that your function will have, right? And then we also found out that defining an array is as simple as giving a name to the array and just putting square brackets. That's it. Your array is defined. Then we went through the same loop that we had a loop like in the last class. We generate the random number, but now we call the arrays method append to add the random number to the array. And then there's a return statement which returns the numbers to be sorted, that array, right? Now in my sort of my main program, I just called that function, and in Python either you need to define the function, declare the function in the beginning of the program, or you can put the function in a different program and import it, or the whole function definition has to be before the program, right? So now let's come to the point of, okay, so I generated these numbers, how do I sort it, right? And I'm just going to use this simple sort as I usually do it in most of my programs, because I'm lazy, right? And so let me define another function for sorting the number, okay? Let me define sort numbers, okay? I'm just defining another function, and it gets a parameter, basically given numbers. It's given a set of a bunch of numbers, you just sort it out, okay? So let me do that. And now the method I'm just going to use is, I mean, it's a very, very inefficient way to sort your numbers. I'm just giving a disclaimer already, but I just want to show you how you do it in the most inefficient way first, and then go through some of the sorting algorithms, right? Now we are coming to the real stuff, right? And some of you, probably, I mean, we all learned sorting algorithms right at college, right? If we went to programming schools. But for others, if you're not familiar with it, I'm going to teach you that in a very, very simple way. See, in Python, it's so simple to program that you will realize that you might as well look at all this like pseudocode, right? And if your college algorithms class is too complex, if you do the same algorithms in Python, it'll be very, very simple, right? Because of the notation. The notation is so very nice, so very understandable. Okay, so so I got the given number of a number in the array, right? So now, how do I sort this array, right? And my simple method is like this. So this time I'm just going to use the other loop, the count and range loop, right? So I say for, and usually when I do these counters, in C or Java, I usually use one counter called I and another counter called J. I don't know how I got this variable name I. I think it's usually I stands for index probably, and then when we needed to have another loop inside one loop, we just simply say J, right? So that's what it is. So I say for I in range, right? And what sort of range is this? So the range is 0. Okay, so in range 0, and now I need to get the length of the array, right? And to get the length of the array, there's a little function in Python called len given numbers. Okay. And the one thing that you will notice that because Python is a dynamic language and we have not defined what sort of variable is here, it's just convenient to say len than trying to get any idea, any or calling any methods of this given numbers object, because we don't know what the type is, right? So now I need another loop, and I'm just going to call it as J in range. And usually the second loop, what you do is you start from I plus 1 and then end at the length of the given numbers. So I got two loops, okay. And as I said, this is a lazy way of doing your sorting, okay. And now what I do is I say, hey, if given number of I, that is the smaller number, if it is greater than, because we need to sort, I'm trying to sort in the ascending order, okay. So if the number is greater than given numbers of J, so if that's what is happening, then you kind of swap out the numbers, right? You put the number in the ith element, a number in the jth element to the number in the ith element, and then put the number in the ith element to the number in the jth element, and you keep doing that for every element in an array, then it gets sorted out, right? So now what I do is that I got to say if that is the situation, then you got to swap them, right? Now to swap them, I probably need to introduce a temporary variable to store the current I value, right? So I need to say temp equals given numbers of I, okay. And then I'm just going to say given numbers of I equals given numbers of J, and then given numbers of J is actually the temporary number which we got it from I, right? Okay. So you did that. Um, and once we have done that, we'll just return that number. So out of the if loop, out of the for loop, out of the other for loop. So those are all things that needs to happen within that indentation, and then you just return given numbers. Okay. So there you go. My lazy, I think there's a term for this sort. Um, I got to figure out what that is, but it's a lazy sort. You can say that it's a lazy programmer sort, right? It's very inefficient because in a situation it can go through n multiplied by n minus 1 times it will iterate, right? So it's in algorithmic terms we can say that it's a n squared efficiency, right? It's an n squared function. It's a squared function of a given value, right? So it's really an inefficient one. But I just want to show how you use an array, how do you use a loop, right? And how do you sort the number, right? And once you're familiar with this, now we'll go to the real type of different type of really efficient sorting methods, right? But as of now, I just want to print the number in the sorted way. And as soon as I get into that situation, now I think that even my printing the array or printing the number should become a function, right? Don't you think? So let's do that. I'll just call it print numbers. Okay, I'll define the function print numbers. Okay, and it will get an array of numbers. Okay, so now how do we do that? It's I can simply copy all of that here. So for a given number in given numbers, you don't have a counter. I got to give a counter here. So count is 0, then given numbers is that, increment the count, print it, print any array, and this will print any array of numbers, right? And if it is if it's more than 10, then you just print it, right? You just print a line. And then I can get rid of this whole thing. So now the function is like this. So given numbers is generate random number, and then I'm just going to say print that. So I just want to print numbers before it got sorted. Okay. Okay. So first print that. Then I'm just going to say sorted numbers equals sort numbers. Let's say sorted numbers, just to not get confused. And you send the given numbers. Okay, and then again I print the sorted numbers. Okay, and let me, before printing, I just want to print just a heading, random set of numbers. Okay, and then after that I'm printing sorted set of numbers. Okay, Okay, so now it's a cool program now. I have a function to generate random numbers, I have a function to sort the numbers, and I have a function to print the numbers. Okay, now let me save my program, and what I'm expecting is first it should print all random numbers, then I should see the numbers really sorted in ascending order. Okay, let's see if it works. So let's see. The first set of numbers really random, not sorted. Then the second set of numbers is very nicely sorted. Now, of course, it's not the most efficient way to sort, but guess what? I mean, it does the job, right? And that's why most of the time, when I'm not focusing on efficiency, I just use this method, right? It's something I learned and it's easy, and most programmers do this, right? So one other nice thing that we have done is, see, we have now written a program that can actually, you can actually go down and say, hey, why don't you generate 1,000 numbers, right? And then we can sort it, right? And that should also work. Let's see what happens. Um, it works. Okay, I generated 1,000 numbers, right? And 1,000 random numbers, and then I'm sorting it out. The only problem with this is that because of the spacing, when you have 1,000, the spacing is not really good, right? But otherwise, I can still generate a very, very large number, right? Large number of random numbers and then sort it. Now, this is really good because later in time, we are going to have, what I'm envisioning is that when we say sorted numbers, we will probably provide some, we will provide an implementation function. Let me put it that way, right? We're going to provide multiple different implementations of sorting algorithms, okay? And when we do that, one of the nice thing about the way we have done our program now is that, well, we can increase the number. Let's say that we increase the number to 100,000 or a million, right? Now we can put timers to measure how long is my program taking, right? And kind of do, it's not still not very scientific comparison, but at least some sort of comparison to see how different sorting methods, how efficient or inefficient they are. Okay. But the one other thing I want to show you is that, so what about these spaces, right? How do I deal with these spaces? What happens when my numbers are really, really large and I need to have really nice way to, still the formatting should be nice. So what I was trying to say is that if my numbers are, and I tried this already, if my numbers are 10,000, for example, and I run the program, now all my numbers are all jumbled up, right? So I got to make a little bit modification to my generate random numbers, where if you really think about it, or print numbers, you think about it, what we really did is that we said, if my string, my numbers digits is 3 digits, then I need to kind of make it into make my formatting to be 4 digits, right, or 4 spaces. Okay, so we can take that same approach and do something here. So if I know the number of digits of the given numbers, then I can make that adjustment, right? Now, how do I? So the first thing what I'm going to do in this function is that I need to find the number of digits. Okay, so number of digits. Okay, and the number of digits, how do I find out? Well, I'm going to give you the most lazy method to do that. It's comparatively it's very slow. So if you have a huge program, if you're trying to use the method I'm going to tell you, it's not a very nice way to do it, right? It's slow. But there are, very sophisticated logarithmic mathematical ways to find the number of digits. We'll cover it later. For now, what you can do is, that this is going to be a number, but you can convert the number into a string. So you can use a function called str, and you can just give a number. Now that converted it into a string. And why should I convert that number into a string? Because now I can find its length. Okay, and given numbers. Sorry. So that's going to be an array, right? So I got to find the length of the array, correct? I mean, it's the length of the array, which is the maximum number, right? Whatever, it's 10,000 or whatever. And I convert the length into a string and then again find its length. So now I know the digits of my maximum number, right? So I get the number of digits. Now the other thing that is so nice in Python is that, well, you look at your formatting, your string formatter, that's really a string, right? So what I could do is, once I know the number of digits, and that's actually a number, right? I take this formatting string, I separate it out, and I can do string concatenation in Python by just adding them together. Okay, if I use this plus symbol, I can do string concatenation. But all of the items in string concatenation, it needs to be a string, right? So I just do as str of number of digits. Okay, so I did the string concatenation, but the one problem here is it sounds as though that this one is separate, right? And then it concatenates that with this, and that won't work. So what I need to do is, let me do the concatenation in a separate variable, right? I can just call it as format equals that. Okay, and then let's see, call it as number format, just to avoid confusion. And then I can say number format dot given number. So that's the format that I kind of constructed. It's dynamic, right? Given the number of digits I find out, and then I just say, hey, you format it that way. Okay, so now let's run it. So now you see, if my number is really big, then accordingly, so this is 10,000, right? So when I did 10,000, it does it well. And one other thing that you can visually inspect is that you can see if the first set is unsorted, right? And the second set is here and it is all sorted. Okay, so that's nicely sorting. So your program is still working, right? So that's good, and it's also very formatting very nicely. The thing that I forgot to mention is that, remember that when we had 3 digits, we said you need to give 4 spaces, right? So I think I forgot to add that, so I'm just going to add it. So the number of digits is, I got to make it 4. So then, if my number is really big, so when it is really 10,000, right, I get one space, right? So it's number of digits. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 1, 6, right? Okay, so now let me run my program again. And so if since it's 5 digits maximum, right? And I don't know if there is a 10,000 here. Let's see. Yeah, there it is, right? And that gives you one space. Okay. So very good. I think our sorting program is done now, and we can try. If it is 10,000, what happens? If it's 100,000, what happens? We can keep running more numbers here. So it's very good way to test it. And so now let me summarize what all we did today. Okay, we learned how to create functions, and we actually have 3 functions now. And you have a function which generates random numbers for how many ever number you want to give as the maximum. It starts with 0. And we have a function to print how many ever numbers we want to print in a nice format. And then we have another function which sorts the number, right? And then you have this main program which actually first generates the numbers, prints them in unsorted order, and then you sort them, and then you print them in the sorted order. Okay, so all of these things we really did some useful work. I mean, you can use this program if you want to sort some numbers less than, let's say, less than a million. Okay, it will work. It's useful, right? Only when the number goes up, then you probably need to have more efficient sorting methods, and we'll come to that in the next section. And then in between, now you know how to loop in 2 ways. One is to loop through a range, and another is loop through items in an array. So we learned that, how to do our if condition. And that's the line where you do the if condition. So we learned that, and we also learned some simple things like how to convert something, how to get the length of an array, how to convert a number into a string, how to get that length, right? So all of that we learned, and how to do format of how to format your digits, right? That's also done. So we have learned a lot of things in Python by just creating this program, right? So go ahead and play with this code, and then the more you code is the more you will learn, right? And if you're stuck, you always have the internet, right? Always when I learn Python, when I'm stuck, I just go and Google it, and I say that, hey, how do I do this? And you have hundreds of articles that will tell you how to do it, right? So enjoy programming in Python, and we'll come back to the next section, and I'll give you more different problems, and then we'll learn more little things in Python. Thank you, and thank you for your time.